Hey everybody, we're back. It's bookends. It's football season. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. We're in the Red Rock Racing Sportsbook, and we're fired up. We got to see a full week of preseason football last week. This is kind of more of a dress rehearsal week this week. So when you look at week one, I know it was only week one, but what takeaways did you have from week one, Jay?
Well, I think one of the bigger surprises for me and enjoying is not only week one, but we got to see him play in the Hall of Fame game, was Dorian Thompson-Robinson for the Cleveland Browns. Shows up, he's fourth on the depth chart for the Browns. He's had two really good preseason games, threw a touchdown pass in both the second half of those games. He's going to get to start tomorrow night against the Eagles. We've actually got a prop up on him. Right. Will he have a rushing or passing touchdown in the first half? You get a plus price on the yes. So Dorian's looked absolutely fantastic. I think so much so that you can make an argument that he should be the number 2 quarterback in Cleveland behind Deshaun Watson.
We've really had some fun with kind of the props with a local flair. I know last year we did some with Daniel Bellinger and now with DTR. But I agree with you. I thought he looked really good in that game. There's been some rumblings of a kind of a quarterback shuffle there. But anxious to see him get to start on Thursday night against the Eagles defense.
Yeah, and we'll see what he can do against maybe some more first and second string guys than third and fourth string guys.
So that was a positive. Was there I have a negative a little bit, I think, when I looked at week one, and everybody kind of thought it was a positive, and maybe it is. But it's the Bears offense. I know Justin Fields went 3 for 3. Last year, they only had 3 pass plays that went for over 50 yards or more and were a touchdown. They had 2 on back-to-back possessions. He was only 3 for 3 for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. But those were both screen plays. He did scramble a little bit. One was to DJ Moore, which I was really happy to see. I think it's really going to help him a lot. One was to Khalil Herbert. But you really didn't get to see him in the pocket at all or throw anything downfield. So the narrative has been, the Bears offense looks great. They've got so many weapons right now. But I would have liked to have seen Justin Fields at least throw the ball downfield a little bit more.
Well, he's skyrocketing up fantasy boards. There's a lot of talk about, the Bears quarterbacks haven't come anywhere close to 3,500 to 4,000 passing yards, and obviously with Fields' ability to run. Getting DJ Moore, the big acquisition that they get from Carolina with trading the number 1 pick. So it was, I think the good thing that coming out of the Bears preseason game is just the positivity.
Yeah, agreed.
They had a positive game. You got to see Moore. The new acquisition scored a touchdown. Herbert going to be that running back number 1. He scores the touchdown. So I think those are positive things for them moving forward.
And I think you will have Chase Claypool, who they traded for last year at the trade deadline. That was a little bit disappointing, I thought, the second half of the season. There's been some rumblings with him or not. Was he worth what they gave up? But he gets the full training camp right now. He's kind of that big body, too. They locked up Cole Kmet again. So, I'm anxious to see Justin Fields kind of develop more as a downfield passer and not just those screens. But definitely a positive sign they scored a couple of touchdowns.
One of the other positives for me was the Denver Broncos. Obviously, Broncos fans, a miserable season last year, really struggled watching Russell Wilson, watching the Broncos in general. I like the way Sean Payton came out in this week 1 of the preseason and played his starters into the second quarter of the first preseason
That was
game.
a message.
But it was also a very positive thing because Russell Wilson did play well, had a couple passes to Cortland Sutton, a couple passes with a touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy, Troutman out of the backfield, or out of the tight end spot, and Majay Pagine out of the backfield. So I thought the Broncos looked good and made a statement to that team that they're going to do some different things and play a different way.
Well, I thought it was interesting because you kind of heard the rumblings that Russell Wilson didn't want to play in that game. But Sean Payton said, I'm going to play you guys. I want to play my starters. That was actually one of the biggest movements on the board. When you think about that game, we saw it was the Saturday night game. You saw a huge move on that game. Really positive outcome for us with the Cardinals winning that game and covering late.
One last surprise, and not to be negative, but one of the things on the negative side of things, we got to see the rookie quarterbacks. Obviously, we talk about Richardson, but C.J. Stroud was where I was going with this. Threw the interception for Houston, only threw like 4 passes, had 1 completion to Nico Collins. I was hoping to see a little bit more out of Stroud. I didn't think that he looked good. I didn't think that Houston offense looked good. So if there's any sign of their line was unable to block. I know that there's a lot of pressure on Dameon Pierce to be able to run the football there, but a little bit concerned with C.J. Stroud's ineffectiveness in his first preseason game.
Well, I think all 3 of those young quarterbacks, if it's Richardson, if it's Stroud, if it's Young, have all been kind of anointed the starting quarterback now. They all have veterans behind him. If it's Andy Dalton, if it's Gardner Minshew, or if it's Davis Mills right now. So, but they're going to go with these guys. There's just not that patience level in the NFL. When you draft a guy number 1 overall or in the top 5, the fan base, the coaches, I think everybody wants to see those guys get out there and go through some of the growing pains. On the flip side, we talked about Jordan Love, who got to sit for 3 years before he kind of gets his shot. So we'll see what his development looks like. But anxious to see what the line move is in the 3 games involving those 3 teams that invested so highly in a rookie quarterback in the top 5.
Well, I think they're going to be bet against, especially.
I agree. Right.
Not just early in the season, but potentially all season long, as these quarterbacks have to find their way. And we've all seen excellent quarterbacks, whether it's Peyton Manning or Troy Aikman, when they get in those rookie seasons on not very good teams, they tend to have high interceptions and high turnovers and high sacks, and none of those things are good for teams that are trying to win games.
Yeah, anxious to kind of see how that works out. I know that a lot of the chatter has been about the rookie quarterbacks, but one of the biggest topics in the offseason so far has been running backs. Their lack of pay, the franchise tag, guys sitting out, asking to be traded. We know last week we addressed that Barkley did come back, signed his franchise tag, just with a small incentive where he could get paid a little bit more. But this past week we saw 2 guys out there. One, Dalvin Cook, signed with the Jets. He's got an opportunity to make over $8 million in incentives. And then, of course, Ezekiel Elliot, who signs with the Patriots, has a chance to make over $6 million in incentives. And I guess the question everyone's asking is, are those 2 guys, do they move the needle at all with, future book odds, win totals? Where do we see that going with those 2 guys? And I think they're more of an insurance policy than anything else for Hall and Stevenson. And I don't really think those 2 guys moves the needle, at least not for me.
Yeah, when you talk about, are we moving their over-under season wins, or are they changing on there to win the conference or to win the Super Bowl? Neither of those deals are moving the numbers. Obviously, talk about Dalvin Cook first going to the Jets. Breece Hall recovering from the ACL. Right. They were questioning already, was he going to be available week 1? How healthy is he going to be the first 6 weeks of the season? So now you bring in that backup in Cook, who was obviously running back number 1 in Minnesota for all those years and widely successful.
Huge home run hitter.
Yeah, he's recovering from shoulder surgery that had in February. So he's not even healthy for week 1. But what these 2 guys do is really complement each other in the fact that they're both a little bit banged up and both recovering, and now they can maybe not take on the load. So it helps shore things up for the Jets. If Breece Hall is not healthy and ready to go as we go into the season, maybe takes off some of that load, as the Jets are expected to hopefully get to the playoffs and go a little bit further, that these guys can last a little bit longer. And on the Ezekiel Elliott side of things, obviously going to the Patriots, I don't feel like he's kind of like the 1A and 1B if we're referring to Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook that way. This is Ramondre Stevenson's backfield.
He might be 1B, though, for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, he should be their 3-down back, and Ezekiel Elliott is being brought in as more of that leadership guy, probably, like you said, maybe vultures a lot of touchdowns around the end zone, comes in as a blocking back. We'll see what they end up using him, but I think what you're saying is he's more like Jamal Williams last year with the Lions, and he's that goal line back and is able to get a lot of those touchdowns.
I think a lot like Jamal Williams, but almost like Zeke and Tony Pollard with the Cowboys. That Pollard did a lot of the work up and down the field, was a big home run hitter, but most of his touchdowns came from outside of 10 yards, and that's where Zeke was brought in to really do that. I think when you talk about running backs, those 2 guys for me don't move the needle, but we know the narrative in the offseason's been, are some of these guys going to get paid? What's going to happen? And to me, there's 2 guys right now that are in kind of contract disputes, want to get paid. One is Jonathan Taylor with the Colts. One is Jacobs with our Raiders right now, who comes off a career year. We know Taylor 2 years ago was so dynamic. I think if either the Colts or Raiders decides to move one of those 2 guys, and rumblings have been that the Chiefs and the Bills have been in on maybe a star running back. There could be other teams as well. But if the Chiefs or Bills were to get Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs, that would absolutely move the needle. And I do think you'd see a shift in future book odds and maybe a shade over the win totals.
Clearly, yeah. Both of those 2 guys are dynamic running backs, head of a backfield, 3-down backs, do everything successfully. Don't have to bring in another goal line back. Don't have to bring in a 3rd-down back. Taylor is back in the Colts camp. Still not practicing, but he's at least back with the Colts, so maybe a good sign there. Josh Jacobs, however, has not come back to the Raiders. It doesn't look like there's an end in sight, so hopefully something can happen there. But as you said, if those 2 guys were to get traded to a playoff-bound team, that's where you'd see some movement on both an over-under season wins and probably a change in their odds to win a championship or conference championship.
And they're both still relatively young. I mean, they haven't gotten that second contract yet, like Zeke had gotten. So they're still on their rookie deals. I think they're both around 24 years old. I think both could make a huge impact. And we know for whatever reason, the Chiefs have always had kind of a revolving door at running back, but the Bills have been looking for that home run hitter. They seem to be in on every free agent running back that was out there, talked a lot about it. Have to think if one of those two guys gets moved, the Bills have to be in the conversation.
Well, I mean, Damian Harris got a little bit banged up. That they acquired him from the Patriots. Hopefully he'll be ready for James Cook. Obviously there, so they've got some depth there. The Chiefs have all kinds of running backs. None of them that are, your superstar quality in a Jacobs or Taylor. But Pacheco's been fantastic. McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think that they like to use the puzzle pieces that they have. But obviously getting a number one back at what matters at what cost could be great for the Chiefs. Chiefs also looking, has been rumored out there looking for receivers as well. So Chiefs are always looking to get themselves a little bit better.
Yeah, I think Sky Moore, depending on how healthy some of their receivers are, especially Tony, if he's healthy, and I think with Sky Moore, you've got a couple of young wide receivers there that might develop some chemistry with Mahomes. Let's look at college football a little bit now. So you look at the top four out there, the AP top 25, Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, and Bama 4. When we look at our numbers and we look to kind of put these college football games up on a week-to-week basis, how much stock do our traders really look at the top four or the top 25? Is that something that they factor in or not?
You mean from a ranking standpoint?
I think,
does that go into how we're making the number? I don't think really at all. I don't think we're really trying to look at where a team is ranked. What the polls say. Now maybe
we know how good they are.
If you're putting up to college football playoff or to win it all, I think you're taking a look at where are they at and how far they have to move. But I don't think that starts to occur until about 8 or 9 weeks into the season. We're taking a look at those rankings. So from a standpoint of the preseason rankings and them coming out now, I mean, we've already had our future book up for a long time. We've got our over-unders up. So there's no real shock that these are the four teams. Hey, 2 SEC teams and the 2 Big Ten teams that we expect to play. And, obviously one of those SEC powerhouses is in. One of those Big Ten powerhouses is in. And we've seen the fact that they could both get in with Ohio State and Michigan getting in. And it's really... And
they play each other, of course, during the regular season.
The question is the ACC, we've consistently seen an ACC team make the college football playoff, and then the Big 12 or Pac-12 team is kind of always on the outskirts sitting in. You have to have a pretty dynamic Pac-12 season to be able to squeeze yourself into the college football playoff. So I know out of the top 4, what are the maybe 2 or 3 teams that can make the playoff? That was my next question.
I know we talked about the top 4. I'm leaning a little bit towards Southern Cal. I think Lincoln Riley's second year there with the Trojans. They were 11-3 last year, but it's Caleb Williams. I mean, there's so much kind of hype with him being the overall, Heisman favorite. Right now, every mock you see, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, for next April has him number 1 to a host of teams that need a quarterback. For me, it's Southern Cal. I know they're sitting right outside the top 4, usually in that 6 to 8 range on most polls you see right now. But I'm going to go with the Trojans that I think can sneak in to that Final 4.
Yeah, I like the Trojans. They're ranked 6th right now. Obviously, they've got a road game at Oregon on November 11th. They play at Notre Dame on October 14th. And the team that they lost to twice last year before losing to Tulane in the bowl game was Utah. Now, they do get Utah at home, but, had those consistent struggles against Utah. They did pick up 2 guys on defense from the transfer portal. From Oklahoma State, linebacker Mason Cobb should be a big part of that run-stopping unit. And a defensive tackle, Barnes from Arizona, another big pickup. And they also, talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they have a freshman enrolled from Bishop Gorman, Zachariah Branch. We're talking about
a local flair.
A receiver with Olympic-class track speed that Caleb Williams is going to be looking for, I hope, often. But Zachariah Branch, look out for USC. Should be a big-name receiver for them.
So now we've touched a little bit on college.
I want to 2 other things, though. When we talk about that ACC team, whether it's Clemson or Florida State, those are the other teams. I think Florida State's sitting currently ranked 8th, Clemson currently ranked 9th.
What about LSU?
LSU's 5, but again, you're going to have to beat an Alabama, you're going to have to beat a Georgia, and they open the season against Florida State, so they've got a tough road ahead of them, but LSU's sitting at 5, obviously sitting right there just on the outskirts. But the ACC really has a chance because if you can run the table in the ACC, I mean, Clemson has gone 2 seasons without making the college football playoff now, but they had 6 straight seasons where they did make the college football playoff and won 2 championships. So they have Cade Klubnik now, going to take over at
yeah.
quarterback. DJ Ukulele transferred to Oregon State. Will Shipley, a really capable running back. They get a wide receiver, Adam Randall. Guy was hurt last year. Should be a dynamic receiver for them. So Clemson's got the ability to run it. They do play Florida State. And then obviously they've got that crazy ACC schedule where you've got tough games with Carolina, South Carolina, Wake Forest, some crazy stuff. But Florida State's the other one. Mike Norvell's 4 seasons there.
Right, yeah.
They're really starting to turn things around. Jordan Travis is going to be their quarterback. This is like his 12th year, I think, in college football. Jokingly, I think this is his 6th season. Very veteran quarterback. He's got also a 6'7", 240-pound wide receiver, Johnny Wilson. That's going to be a nightmare for defenses to cover. They play in a home opener in a neutral spot playing in Orlando, and then they have to travel to Clemson. So that Florida State-Clemson game is obviously going to make a big impact on who has a chance to slip into that college football playoff out of the ACC.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good teams in that top 10. Anxious to see how that kind of unfolds. But, we've covered a little bit of the pro football. We've covered some college. And all I can say to you guys now is, what the heck are you waiting for? Last man standing, college and pros. You can sign up right now, $150,000 guaranteed in the pros, $100,000 guaranteed in college. It's a great format. You sign up for $100, you get 4 entries, the 5th one's free. It's just like the college basketball tournament. You win, you move on, you lose, and you go home. But again, 150 guaranteed in the pros, 100 guaranteed in college.
Not only sign up for Last Man Standing, but make sure you get your mobile app. Register for the mobile app, up to a $500 bonus, 10% of your opening deposit amount. You're going to get in a deposit bonus.
I just love football season,
up to
guys.
$500. So now's the time. Get the mobile app, and we're talking about the Dorian Thompson-Robin prop. We continue to add props almost on a daily basis, whether it's college football, pro football. The team does a great job of continuing to push the envelope on the number of bet offerings you have entering this football season.
Yeah, I think there's so much fun. I mean, we enjoy it. I mean, kind of be creative, think outside the box, and really kind of expand that overall wagering menu. And that's why the app is so great, because everything that we book is on the app, and it's all the most current odds. You're not grabbing a sheet that is outdated, or you have it right there at your fingertips to look at all these kind of cool props and stuff. So we're going to come right back, and we're going to have some fun on the second segment of Bookends, and we're going to dive a little bit into fantasy football and give you guys some critiquing of what we think are maybe overrated, underrated, and sleepers at the quarterback position. We'll be right back here at Red Rock on Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back here at Red Rock for our second segment of the sports betting podcast Bookends. We're going to dive into a little bit of fantasy football now. Jay and I seem to have a lot of fun with this throughout the course of the season. And we're going to start off with quarterbacks. And we're going to kind of ask the questions. Who's overrated? Who's underrated? And maybe who's a sleeper that could kind of sneak into the top 5. So first, we're going to talk about overrated. I'm going to go with a guy that's kind of right at the tail end of the top 10. I'm going to say it's Kirk Cousins. I know that maybe for a fantasy perspective, he has put some good numbers on the board, but it just seems like can't win that big game. Lost the playoff game at home to the Giants. That the 3rd and 8 when he throws for 7.
But from a fantasy perspective, you don't really care whether he's winning or losing games.
And they did.
You're talking about what are his stats that he's putting up, and that is why Kirk Cousins gets that 10th rating, is because he has Jefferson and because he has been able to put up consistently numbers. And their offense with O'Connell likes to throw.
And they did add Jordan Addison, from Southern Cal, so maybe that helps a little bit. And I just was looking at the top 10 and trying to kind of piece together who I thought was a little bit overrated. And I just thought with the tools he's had around him, with Jefferson and with Thielen and Cook and Osborne and some of the other young playmakers they had, Matson, that I just thought that there should have been more production from the Vikings. So I'm still going to stick with Kirk Cousins, for me, a little bit overrated.
Yeah, and I'm not buying into Kirk Cousins. He's at 10, and I think you're right. I think there's a lot of guys 11 through 15 that I would maybe take above Cousins. The one thing he does have going for him is I think that I always call it the Central, the North,
whatever we
want to call it. The Bears secondary is going to be bad. And the Lions secondary is going to be bad. Those are some weaknesses within the division. Packers secondary is pretty solid, but he should be able to pick on. And obviously with the Justin Jefferson, he's going to have success in a lot of games just by throwing the ball to Jefferson. You're going to be shocked where I go with my overrated. And when I say overrated, I'm saying I don't like where he goes in fantasy drafts, and I think it's too early for me. But I'm going to tell you, I think Josh Allen is overrated this year from a fantasy football standpoint. He goes number 2 commonly behind Mahomes. I can easily make an argument that Jalen Hurts should go before him, but I have 4 different quarterbacks that I have ahead of Josh Allen, and he's done it with kind of no special offensive weapons around him other than Stephon Diggs, who obviously has been fantastic for him the last several seasons. He obviously runs the football. I think he led the Bills in 7 or 8 games as their leading rusher. But when I look at last season, the first 9 games that they played, he had over 300 yards passing, 6 of those 9 games. 67% of the games, he threw for over 300 yards. In the last 7 games of the year, coincidentally, the Bills went 7-0 in those 7 games. Josh Allen only threw for over 300 yards 1 time, and that was against the Miami Dolphins. He also threw for 400 yards the first time he played him, and then in the wild card game, he threw for 352 against them. So he loves playing the Miami Dolphins. However, he only plays the Miami Dolphins 1 time this year in your fantasy football because they play the Dolphins in Week 18, which isn't going to help you from a fantasy football standpoint. Right. The teams he is going to play twice are the New York Jets and the New England Patriots, and the New York Jets have owned him. Yep. Holding him to 147 yards and 205 yards, and the New England Patriots have held him to 223 and 254. Coincidentally, the Bills played the New England Patriots in Week 17 in Buffalo, so you're dealing with potential weather in Buffalo, and you're playing a team that he doesn't like passing against in the Patriots, potentially in the Fantasy Football Championship. So I just don't like where Josh Allen is at. That doesn't mean that Josh Allen isn't going to finish top 5, top 6. I just don't like drafting him as the second quarterback, which you're having to take late second round, maybe early third round.
I think there's a lot of pressure on them, though, this year. I mean, they clearly were outplayed in that playoff game against the Bengals. They're getting a new stadium. I think the expectation level is that, Buffalo is one of the best teams in the AFC. They're going to take that next step. But now you look at Miami, and as good as they've gotten with their receivers, and then the Jets now who have got Aaron Rodgers, Dalvin Cook, that gap has really narrowed right now between the top team and the second and third team. So I think it's a much tougher division than it was before.
Yeah, I'm just caution on Josh Allen. I think that, by the time we finish this fantasy football season, I don't see Josh Allen as QB2, QB1. And if you're drafting him there,
okay,
good luck.
I'm going to go with underrated now.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's,
he's ranked 8th, 9th quarterback.
8th, 9th. And I think when you look at Trevor Lawrence, and he got the team to the playoffs last year, he threw 25 touchdown passes. He was down from his rookie year of 17 interceptions to 8 interceptions last year. If he could get 10 more touchdown passes, he's a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But what makes me say that he can get there is what he has around him. If you look at Josh Allen's 3rd year, when he took that big leap, the Bills went out and got Stephon Diggs. If you look at Jalen Hurts' 3rd year, what did the Eagles do? They went out and got A.J. Brown. This is Trevor Lawrence's 3rd year. What did they do? They went out and got Calvin Ridley. So we know Ridley was out for the year, but everything you hear from the Jacksonville Jaguars is this guy's dynamic, hasn't missed a step. He adds so much speed to our offense. He's a great route runner. So I think adding that extra piece to go with Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and Evan Ingram and Etienne, that he's got enough pieces around him where I think Trevor Lawrence could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. He's my underrated quarterback going into this season.
I like Lawrence as well. All the good things that you're talking about there. Doug Peterson has kind of transformed him from what we saw early under Urban Meyer. I worry a little bit about the fact that they play the Colts, they play the Titans, they play the Texans, teams that are going to struggle to score, and maybe they can kind of pound the rock a little bit more there and have a little bit more of a balanced offense. I know they averaged just over 23.5 points a game last year, and Doug Peterson has said that he believes the Jaguars should be averaging 30 points a game this year. So if the Jags go average 30 points a game, and you're a Trevor Lawrence fan, that's he's going to pay his rewards.
But he's
there.
Somebody, when we talk about Josh Allen, that maybe Allen goes someplace in the 2nd or 3rd round as the second quarterback taken off the board. You're seeing Trevor Lawrence go after the 5th round, more 6th, maybe 7th round. So maybe some value there in a guy like Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and I'm going to go for my underrated, back to Justin Herbert. I think he's sitting kind of in the 7th ranked quarterback. behind Justin Fields. Threw 25 touchdowns last year, which really kind of put things on a damper for him. Mike Williams only played 13 games for the Chargers last year. Keenan Allen only played 10 games for the Chargers last year. If we just look at Herbert going back to 2021, he threw 38 touchdown passes in that year.
Which is elite.
Yeah.
That puts you in the top 5.
And so he gets Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator from Dallas, moves over to the Chargers this year. We all know what Kellen Moore likes to do, and that's throw the football. They go out and draft with the 21st pick Quentin Johnson. Josh Palmer, with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen being banged up last year, Joshua Palmer became one of their top receivers. So they really developed him throughout the year. So now you have those 4 dynamic receivers, and you add in probably the best pass-catching back in the whole league in Eckler. He has all the weapons and a schedule that's fitting a guy that can leapfrog. So from an underrated standpoint, I think Herbert at 7, I think he finds his way into the top 3 this year. And if he can get himself back to that 38 to 40 touchdowns, he can find himself as QB1.
And that's where I think when we talk about value for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, kind of an interesting stat that only 2 quarterbacks averaged less yards per pass play than Justin Herbert did last year. They go out and they do draft Johnston from TCU. He averaged over 18.5 yards a reception. So with Kellen Moore adding that extra weapon on offense, that might be the difference to get Justin Herbert over the top and make him a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
The other thing that Kellen Moore was really good at in Dallas was involving the tight end. We saw Dalton Schultz have 2 excellent seasons his last 2 seasons in Dallas. So Gerald Everett might be a sleeper on the tight end side if the Chargers are able to involve him into the offense. And if they get the backfield and these receivers and a tight end involved, they're going to be misery to cover it in those backfields.
All right, so we've touched on guys we thought were overrated, guys that we thought were underrated. And how about maybe like a sleeper right now? I'm going to go with Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. I mean, a couple of years ago, Goff was miserable. The Rams traded him. Kind of was like, okay, he's going to Detroit just for a year while they decide to draft a young quarterback. He was sensational last year. I mean, with the St. Brown, a lot of the young wide receivers he had, especially at home when he played in the Dome, he put up some big numbers last year. And in the second half of this season, I think 5 of his last 7 games are all indoors. One of those games is at Dallas, too, with a retractable roof that they can close. So 6 of his last 7 games are indoors, and he's been unbelievable on the turf and indoors. So I'm going to go with Jared Goff as my sleeper. I think he can sneak into that top 5 fantasy next year or this year, especially with St. Brown's continued development. And maybe it'll be a little bit slow starting until they get Jameson Williams back. But when he comes back to week 6, I think he's got a dynamic young duo of wideouts to help him achieve that.
Yeah, and Laporta at tight end they draft. I also Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield is another. That you talk about having Swift that they trade to the Eagles and they really just replace him with Giggs. So he's got
Gibbs
weapons.
Might be more in that Eckler role where he's catching the ball out of the backfield a lot as well.
Yep. My sleeper, I'm going to go deep down the sleeper list, and I'm going to talk about some receivers before I get to my sleeper and tell you that Jamar Chase is ranked the number 2 receiver. T. Higgins is ranked the number 13 receiver. Their quarterback, Joe Burrow, becomes the 5th ranked quarterback because he's got 2 stud receivers. Jalen Hurts, number 3 ranked quarterback. Obviously, he runs the ball a ton. But A.J. Brown, ranked number 9 receiver, and Devonta Smith ranked number 14 receiver. My quarterback that I'm going to give you as a sleeper has Tyreek Hill ranked number 4 and Jalen Waddle ranked number 11, and he's ranked quarterback number 14. So we're talking about
but that's for a reason.
I know, but you're talking about 2 wide receivers that people are drafting in the 1st and 2nd round, and we're saying that Tua Tagovailoa is the 14th ranked quarterback. Well, I don't know how Tua Tagovailoa is going to end up quarterback 14, and Hill's going to end up wide receiver 4, and Waddle's going to be wide receiver 11. If Tua is healthy,
he's got to play the game. That's the key.
Healthy.
Yep.
He is a dynamic player that'll find himself as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. If he's not healthy, you can't play him. But where you can get Tua and the value of Tua, and now you get Hill and Waddle catching passes, if Tua is healthy, you have to play him. So if you're looking at the way you're drafting, you can find a way to steal Tua. Maybe you don't have to, all these quarterbacks are being drafted 2nd through 6th round to get these top 10 quarterbacks. Well, if you want to wait and take a quarterback in the 10th round, 11th round, take Tua, and then take another guy, a Deshaun Watson, a Kirk Cousins, a Danny Dimes, get all these guys so that you have the backup to Tua. But I think if Tua stays healthy, he's a dynamic player. You can play some matchups, but you're getting Waddle and you're getting Hill. So my sleeper, ranked at 14th, Tua Tagovailoa, I think he finds himself within the top 10 and will give him some blessing to stay healthy.
I don't disagree with that. It's just that asterisk next to it that he has to stay healthy.
But every player you draft in fantasy football, there's an asterisk next to him that they have to stay healthy for you to earn points. Now, granted, he's way more risky.
Right. That's, I think, my key.
If he's healthy, he's a player you want on your roster.
When you look at when he was healthy last year, between Waddle and Hill, they had a combined 15 receiving touchdowns with Tua. The games that Tua didn't play, they had exactly 0 combined. So I think it shows what the impact Tua is to those two guys and that offense. And I think he is a big risk, but if he and he's been coached in the offseason of, I think it's jiu-jitsu he's been taking and how to fall a little bit differently and maybe, maybe you're not going to see him take those big hits. Get rid of the ball, get out of bounds. But if he can stay healthy and on the field, that Dolphin offense, I think, is really dynamic.
Well, if you don't have the confidence to take Tua, then how do you have the confidence to take
Hill or Waddle
in the first round and Waddle in the second round if their stats are so relied on Tua being on the field?
It's a really good point.
So I just don't think that being QB 14 is the right spot for him, and I feel like there's value in your draft if you can steal him in that 10th, 11th round, make him your QB1 until he goes down, and have a backup plan if he does.
I think it's just like you said, the risk factor. We know that football is a violent sport. We know that more than likely, outside of a very few quarterbacks, they're all not going to play the full schedule. But in Tua's case, you just worry about that one big hit. Does that really change the whole dynamic of your fantasy team if you're looking at it from that angle?
Sure. I think when you take Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields and any of these guys, it's one big hit. You know they're runners. You talk about a guy that's going in the top 3 picks, and I know we'll get to running backs next week, but where Christian McCaffrey is being drafted. Christian McCaffrey, outside of last year, he was hurt the last 2 seasons, and yet he's getting picked in the top 3. These guys have injury history, and you're putting all your chips on the table with that player. If you're willing to draft Tua, I think it'll work out for you.
Yep. We'll see what happens. Wanted to give you guys some insight like we did, against overrated, underrated sleepers. See if you guys agree, disagree. But we're going to have fun with the fantasy segment leading up until kickoff a few weeks from now. So hope you guys got some great information today. Again, don't forget, get signed up for Last Man Standing, college and pro. And it really is a great time to get the STN mobile app. There's so much going on. We're not that far away from hockey. We're not that far away from basketball. So get signed up for STN Sports right now. Everything, the most current odds that you could possibly get. So we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. Jason, I'm Chucky. We will see you guys next week for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends.